The caregiver dropped the medication bottle into her purse and smiled at the hidden camera she didn't know existed. 12 pills, enough to sell for $800 on the street. She had been in Marcus Whitfield's mansion for exactly 9 days, and she had already stolen enough to buy herself a new laptop. But she wasn't done. She walked toward the triplets, sitting motionless in their wheelchairs, pulled out her phone, and snapped 3 photos of their medical equipment. A tabloid had offered her $6,000 for exclusive images of the billionaire's paralyzed sons. She didn't know Marcus was watching every second from his office upstairs. She didn't know this was the 11th caregiver to betray him. And she didn't know that in 3 months, a woman named Grace Mitchell would walk through that same door and do something so shocking that Marcus Whitfield, a man who had stopped believing in miracles, would fall to his knees and weep. If you want to see what happened next, subscribe to our channel and watch this story until the end. Comment below with the city you are watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled around the world. Marcus Whitfield pressed the intercom button with a hand that shook from rage. Security to the therapy room, now! He watched on the monitor as the caregiver, a woman named Patricia Hendricks, who had come with glowing references from 3 families, continued scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that her career was about to end. 45 seconds later, 2 security guards appeared at the therapy room door. Patricia looked up confused. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" "Ma'am, you need to come with us." "Excuse me, I'm in the middle of the children's afternoon routine." Marcus's voice crackled through the intercom speaker, making Patricia jump. "The routine you're supposedly following while selling photos of my sons to the press." The color drained from Patricia's face. "Mr. Whitfield, I don't know what you're talking about. I would never—" Camera 7. Timestamp 4 minutes ago, you photographed their medical equipment and texted someone named Dave Media Contact. Would you like me to read the message out loud, or would you prefer to leave quietly? Patricia's mouth opened and closed. Her eyes darted to the corner of the room where the camera was hidden. "I can explain." "No, you can't. Gerald, please escort Miss Hendricks off the property. Her final paycheck will be mailed." Patricia's composure cracked. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? Sitting up there in your tower watching everyone like we're criminals? Maybe if you actually spent time with your own children instead of spying on the help, you wouldn't need to hire strangers to love them for you." The words hit Marcus like a punch to his chest. But he didn't respond. He watched as security led her out of the room past his 3 sons, who sat motionless in their wheelchairs, completely unaware that another person who was supposed to care for them had just betrayed their father. Lucas, Nathan, and Adam. 2 years old, identical in their stillness. Severe spastic quadriplegia, cerebral palsy. All 3 of them. Marcus turned off the monitor and pressed his palms against his eyes. 11 caregivers, 11 betrayals. And Patricia's words echoing in his skull like a curse. Maybe if you actually spent time with your own children. He opened the desk drawer and pulled out the photograph he kept hidden there. Catherine, 8 months pregnant, glowing with joy. Her hands rested on her belly, protecting 3 lives she would never see grow up. "I'm trying," he whispered to her image. "I'm trying to keep them safe." But was he? Or was he just keeping himself safe from the pain of loving them too much? His phone buzzed. A text from his brother David. "Heard you fired another one. You okay?" Marcus typed back, "Fine." "Want to grab dinner? Talk about it?" "Busy." "Marcus, you can't keep doing this. Catherine wouldn't want—" Marcus turned off his phone and threw it in the drawer. David didn't get to tell him what Catherine would want. David wasn't there when she died. David didn't hold her hand for 3 hours while her blood pressure dropped and the monitors screamed and the doctors worked frantically to save a woman who was already gone. David didn't hear her last words. "Promise me," Catherine had whispered, her voice so faint Marcus had to press his ear against her lips. "Promise me you'll tell them about me. Promise me you'll love them enough for both of us." "I promise," Marcus had said. "I promise, Katie. I promise." But he had broken that promise. Every single day for 2 years he had broken it, because loving them meant risking more pain, and Marcus had no more pain left to give. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Whitfield, this is Gerald. Miss Hendricks has been removed from the property. Should I contact the agency?" Marcus pressed the button. "Yes, tell them I need someone by Monday." "Yes, sir. And sir, the night nurse is asking about the boys' evening medication schedule." "Tell her to check the chart. Everything is documented." "Yes, sir." Marcus released the button and leaned back in his chair. The silence pressed against him from all sides. 27 rooms in this mansion, a staff of 6 people, and he had never felt more alone. He pulled up the security feed from the therapy room. The night nurse Margaret was preparing the boys for their evening routine. She moved efficiently between the 3 wheelchairs, adjusting positions, checking vitals, documenting everything on the tablet. She never talked to them, never touched them beyond what was necessary, never looked at them like they were children instead of patients. That was exactly what Marcus wanted. Professional distance, no emotional attachment, no risk of betrayal. But watching his sons sit there like statues, staring at nothing, responding to nothing, Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Is this what Catherine died for? So their sons could exist without living? He closed the laptop and walked to the window. The garden stretched out below, perfectly maintained and completely lifeless. The fountain in the center had stopped working 8 months ago. Catherine had loved that fountain. She used to sit beside it, reading pregnancy books and talking to the babies growing inside her. "Can you hear the water?" she would ask them. "That's going to be your favorite sound. I just know it." Marcus pressed his forehead against the cold glass. She had been so sure, so confident that their life would be perfect. 3 boys, 3 cribs arranged in a half circle so they could see each other when they woke up. A nursery painted pale yellow with elephants and giraffes she had spent 2 weeks painting herself. Brothers should never feel alone, she had told him. But their sons were alone, surrounded by staff and equipment and money, and completely alone. Because their father was too afraid to love them. Marcus stayed at the window until the sun went down and the garden disappeared into darkness. Then he walked back to his desk, pulled up the agency's number, and began the process of finding caregiver number 12. The first caregiver had lasted 10 days. Marcus remembered her clearly, young, enthusiastic, fresh out of nursing school. She had cried during the interview when he told her about Catherine's death. "I'll take such good care of them," she had promised. "They'll feel so loved." 9 days later, she quit without notice, left a voicemail at 6 a.m. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Watching those boys every day knowing they'll never get better, it's too sad. I thought I could handle it, but I can't. I'm sorry." Marcus had listened to that message 17 times. Each time, a different part of him died. Too sad. His son's existence was too sad for a stranger to witness. The second caregiver lasted 3 weeks. She seemed more resilient, older, experienced, practical. Then Marcus discovered she had been posting photos of Lucas's wheelchair on Instagram. The caption read, "My daily struggle. Pray for me." Not for the boys, for herself. Marcus fired her that afternoon. The third caregiver was the one who truly broke something inside him. Her name was Sandra Chen. 52 years old, 23 years of experience, recommended by 4 families Marcus had personally verified. She was warm with the boys, gentle, attentive. For the first time since Catherine died, Marcus felt like his sons were in good hands. Then one morning, Marcus received a Google alert for his name. Inside the Whitfield tragedy, what really happened to the billionaire's sons. A tabloid had published a 4-page exclusive. Medical records, private photographs, details about the boys' conditions that only someone with direct access could have known. Sandra had sold the story for $8,000. Marcus confronted her in the therapy room. She didn't even deny it. "You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, she said. "What's a few thousand to you? Those boys are never going to get better anyway. At least I got something out of this." Marcus stood there looking at the woman who had held his sons, fed them, sung to them, and realized he had been a fool to trust anyone. "Get out," he said quietly. "And if you ever speak about my family again, I will destroy you." Sandra laughed as she gathered her things. "Destroy me? You can't even look at your own children without cameras between you and them. You're already destroyed, Mr. Whitfield. You just don't know it yet." That night, Marcus installed 47 security cameras throughout the mansion. Every room, every hallway, every corner where someone might think they were unwatched. His brother David called it paranoid. His financial advisor called it excessive. His therapist, the one he stopped seeing the following week, called it a manifestation of unprocessed grief. Marcus called it protection. And the cameras kept proving him right. Caregiver number 4 stole prescription medication from the locked cabinet. The cameras caught her at 2 a.m. using a copied key she had made from Marcus's original. Caregiver number 5 was found going through Catherine's jewelry box in the master bedroom, a room Marcus had specifically said was off limits. She had Catherine's engagement ring in her pocket when security escorted her out. Caregiver number 6 used the home network to access financial documents. She downloaded 3 years of tax returns before Marcus's IT security flagged the breach. Caregiver number 7 was rough with Nathan during a transfer. The cameras showed her jerking his small body with unnecessary force, leaving bruises on his arms. Marcus pressed charges. She pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. Caregiver number 8 seemed perfect for 3 months. Then Marcus discovered she had been giving interviews to a parenting podcast using his sons as examples of children who will never reach their potential. She had recorded audio inside the therapy room without consent. Caregiver number 9 lasted 2 weeks before quitting with a text message. "Those boys creep me out. They just stare. It's like they're not even real people." Caregiver number 10 was caught selling stories to a celebrity gossip website, $40 per tip. She had made over $2,000 in 6 weeks. And now caregiver number 11 was being escorted off the property with photos of his son's medical equipment on her phone. 11 people, 11 failures, 11 confirmations that Marcus was right to trust no one. He sat in his office that night surrounded by monitors showing empty rooms and made a decision. He would hire caregiver number 12 because his sons needed someone to feed them and position them and administer their medications, but he would never trust again. He would watch every second through his cameras. He would catch every betrayal before it could wound him. And he would never ever let anyone close enough to hurt him the way Sandra Chen had. Because hope was the most dangerous thing in the world. And Marcus had learned to kill it before it could kill him. The agency sent Grace Mitchell's file on Friday afternoon. Marcus read it 3 times looking for red flags. 28 years old, 4 years at Boston Children's Rehabilitation Center, relocated to Connecticut to care for her aging mother. References from 3 supervisors who used words like exceptional and dedicated and natural gift with children. No social media presence, no public photos, no digital footprint beyond professional licensing records. That last part bothered him. Everyone had a digital footprint. Everyone posted photos or checked in at restaurants or shared opinions about politics. The absence of any online presence meant one of 2 things. Either Grace Mitchell was extraordinarily private or she was hiding something. Marcus ran his own background check. Court records, financial history, property ownership, news archives. Everything came back clean. Too clean. He added 3 extra cameras to the therapy room and scheduled the interview for Sunday morning. Grace Mitchell arrived at the mansion at exactly 9:47 a.m. Marcus watched her walk up the front drive on the security monitor. She was smaller than he expected. Dark hair pulled back from a face that revealed nothing. Canvas bag over one shoulder. She walked with the unhurried confidence of someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to hide, or someone who was very good at pretending. Marcus met her in his office rather than the formal sitting room. The office was less comfortable, more intimidating. He wanted to see how she handled pressure. Grace sat in the chair across from his desk and placed her documentation folder in front of her without being asked. "Thank you for coming, Miss Mitchell. Thank you for considering me, Mr. Whitfield." Her voice was calm, steady. No tremor of nervousness, no eager smile designed to win his approval. "I've reviewed your file," Marcus said. 4 years at Boston Children's Rehabilitation Center. Why did you leave?" "My mother was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. She lives alone in Hartford. I wanted to be closer." "You moved across state lines for a parent with Alzheimer's, and now you're applying for a live-in position that will consume most of your time. How do you plan to manage both?" Grace didn't flinch at the aggressive question. My mother is in a memory care facility now. I visit her 3 times a week. My evenings and 1 weekend day would be sufficient. This position would not interfere with my responsibilities to her. Marcus leaned back, studying her face. I'll be direct with you, Miss Mitchell. I've employed 11 caregivers in 18 months. None of them lasted. Some quit. Others were terminated for theft, breach of privacy, or failure to follow protocol. I've read about some of those situations. I'm sorry you experienced that. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for someone who can follow instructions without improvising, maintain professional boundaries without exception, and understand that my son's medical team has established a prognosis that should not be challenged by feel-good optimism. Something flickered behind Grace's eyes. A spark of something that wasn't submission. May I ask what that prognosis is? Severe spastic quadriplegia, all 3 boys. The neurologists have concluded that walking is highly unlikely, possibly never. My sons require maintenance care, Miss Mitchell. Feeding positioning basic therapy to prevent deterioration. What they do not need is false hope. Grace was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but unwavering. With respect, Mr. Whitfield, I'm not sure hope can be false if it's given freely. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. That's exactly the kind of statement that concerns me. The previous caregivers who came with optimism were the ones who did the most damage. They promised things they couldn't deliver. They made my sons objects of their savior fantasies. And when reality didn't match their expectations, they left, or stole, or sold our private information to strangers. I understand your concern. Grace leaned forward slightly. But I need you to understand something too. I'm not here to save anyone. I'm here to care for 3 children who need attention, consistency, and someone who sees them as people rather than patients. If you're looking for someone who will follow a checklist without engaging with your sons as human beings, I'm probably not the right fit. Marcus stared at her. 11 caregivers, and none of them had pushed back like this. They had all nodded and agreed and promised to follow his rules. And then they had broken every single one. Why do you want this job, Miss Mitchell? The truth. Grace held his gaze. I had a younger brother, Danny, born with spina bifida. Doctors told my parents he would never walk, never have a normal life. My grandmother refused to accept that. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Against his better judgment, he asked, What happened? My grandmother moved in with us when Danny was 6 months old. She worked with him every single day. Exercises, stretches, games that were really therapy in disguise. The doctors said she was wasting her time. They said the damage was permanent and no amount of love could change it. Were they right? Grace smiled, and for the first time, Marcus saw something real break through her composed exterior. Danny walked at age 4, ran at age 6, played high school basketball. He's a physical therapist now in Seattle. Works with kids like your sons. Silence filled the office. Marcus looked at Grace Mitchell and saw something he hadn't seen in 18 months of interviews. Not desperation for the job, not false confidence, not the calculated performance of someone who knew what he wanted to hear. He saw belief, real belief, the kind that had been burned out of him the day Catherine died, and it terrified him more than any betrayal ever could. If I hire you, he said slowly, you follow the medical protocol exactly. No improvising, no experimental treatments, no stories about your grandmother's miracles. My son's doctors have made their prognosis clear, and I expect you to respect it. I understand your terms. You'll be monitored, cameras in every room. I review footage daily. If I see anything that concerns me, you'll be terminated immediately. I assumed as much. Marcus studied her for any sign of deception. He found nothing he could use to reject her. You start tomorrow, 7 a.m. Grace stood and extended her hand. Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. I won't let you down. Marcus shook her hand briefly. Everyone says that. Grace picked up her bag and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. Mr. Whitfield, I know you don't trust me. You have no reason to, but I want you to know something. She turned to look at him. Those 3 boys in there, they're not just a job to me. From the moment I read about this position, I knew I was supposed to be here. I don't know why yet, but I will. She left before Marcus could respond. He sat alone in his office for a long time, staring at the empty chair. Then he pulled up the security feed and watched his sons sit motionless in their wheelchairs, and he prepared himself for the inevitable betrayal, because that was all he knew how to expect anymore. Grace arrived at 6:47 a.m. the next morning, 13 minutes early. Marcus watched her walk through the front door on the security feed. Same canvas bag, same calm expression. She didn't look around at the marble floors or crystal chandeliers like the others had. She simply walked toward the therapy room as if she had done it 100 times before. Margaret, the night nurse, met her at the door. "You must be the new one." "Grace Mitchell, nice to meet you." "Likewise." The boys are fed and positioned. Sleep logs are on the tablet. Dr. Coleman's protocol is in the blue binder. Mr. Whitfield's rules are in the red binder. Read the red one first. "Any advice?" Margaret looked at her for a long moment. "Don't get attached. It makes it harder when you leave." Grace said nothing. She just nodded and walked into the therapy room. Marcus watched her stop just inside the door and look at the 3 boys in their wheelchairs. Lucas, Nathan, Adam, still, silent, staring at nothing. Grace didn't move for 30 seconds. She just stood there looking at them with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Then she walked to Lucas's wheelchair and knelt down beside him. "Hello, sweetheart," she said softly. "I'm Grace. I'm going to be taking care of you and your brothers for a while. Is that okay?" Lucas didn't respond. He never responded. But Grace waited anyway, as if she expected an answer, as if she believed one might come. "I know you can't tell me yet," she continued. "That's okay. We'll figure out how to communicate. There's no rush." She reached out and touched his hand gently, not grabbing, not manipulating, just a light touch. Marcus frowned at the screen. This wasn't protocol. The protocol was feeding positioning documented exercises, not soft-spoken introductions, not promises of communication that would never happen. His finger hovered over the intercom button. He should stop this now, remind her of the rules. But something made him hesitate. Grace moved to Nathan next, then Adam. The same quiet greeting, the same gentle touch, the same patience. When she finished, she walked to the shelf and picked up the red binder. She read it for 20 minutes without looking up. Then she did something that made Marcus's breath catch. She looked directly at the camera in the corner of the room. Not accidentally, deliberately. She held the gaze for 3 seconds, acknowledging that she knew he was watching, that she understood the terms of their arrangement. Then she turned back to the boys and began the morning routine. For 3 hours, Grace followed the protocol exactly. Feeding assistance, positioning adjustments, range of motion exercises. She documented everything. She kept her commentary minimal and professional. Marcus began to relax. Maybe she was different. Maybe she understood. At 10:15 a.m., Grace took a break. She walked to the staff kitchen, made coffee, and looked out the window for several minutes. Then she pulled something from her canvas bag, a small Bluetooth speaker. Marcus sat up straight. Grace carried the speaker back to the therapy room and set it on the shelf. She connected her phone and pressed play. Soft piano music filled the room. Marcus grabbed his phone to call her. This wasn't in the protocol. There was a licensed sound therapist who came on Thursdays with specific frequencies. Random music was not part of the treatment plan. He started to dial. Then Lucas turned his head. Marcus's thumb froze. His son, who spent every day staring at the same spot on the wall, had just turned his head toward the sound. It was small, just a few degrees. But it was intentional. Grace saw it too. She didn't celebrate. She just smiled softly and adjusted the volume. "You like that," she said quietly. "It's Debussy. My grandmother used to play it on Sunday mornings." Nathan's fingers twitched against his armrest. Adam's eyes opened. Adam, who kept his eyes closed most of the day, opened his eyes and looked at Grace. Marcus set his phone down slowly. 3 responses. 3 separate responses to a woman who had been in their lives for 4 hours. The doctors had said environmental awareness was minimal. They had said responses would be involuntary, not intentional. They had said not to expect engagement, but this looked like engagement. Grace turned off the music after 10 minutes and returned to the protocol. Marcus watched every second, looking for the trick, the manipulation, the sign that this was performance. He found nothing. At 2 p.m., Grace began the afternoon exercises, range of motion, just like the protocol prescribed. But something was different. She wasn't just moving their limbs mechanically, she was adding variations, gentle resistance exercises, weight-bearing attempts that lasted only seconds. Marcus grabbed his phone and dialed. "Yes, Mr. Whitfield. What are you doing?" "The afternoon exercise routine." "That's not what I see, you're improvising." "I'm adding supplemental motor pattern training. It helps build neural pathways." "That's not in the protocol." "No, sir, it's not." Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. "Then stop, immediately." Silence. Then Grace said, "Mr. Whitfield, may I speak freely?" "You may not. You may follow instructions." "With respect, the instructions are designed for maintenance. Your sons are not machines to be maintained. They're children." "Miss Mitchell." "I've been here for 7 hours. In that time, I've seen Lucas turn his head toward music. I've seen Nathan's fingers respond to sound. I've seen Adam open his eyes and focus. Those are not the responses of children with minimal awareness. Those are the responses of children who are trying to engage with the world." Marcus closed his eyes. The doctors have examined them extensively. They have experience with averages, with statistics. They don't have experience with Lucas, Nathan, and Adam. Specialists can be wrong. Yes, they can. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. You've been here 1 day. 1 day. And you think you know better than doctors who have studied these conditions for decades. I think I know that giving up on a child is the one thing guaranteed to fail. The words hit Marcus like a slap. "If you can't follow the protocol," he said coldly, "you can leave today." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "I'll follow your protocol, Mr. Whitfield. But I want you to know something. Those 3 boys, they're fighting. I can see it. Maybe you can't see it through the cameras, but I can see it up close. They're not giving up. The question is whether the adults around them will give them the chance to succeed." She hung up. Marcus stared at his phone. He should fire her. Right now. Call the agency for caregiver number 13. But he didn't move, because when she described what she had seen, Lucas turning his head, Nathan's fingers twitching, Adam opening his eyes, Marcus had felt something stir inside him, hope, and it terrified him more than any betrayal ever could. That night, Marcus sat in his office at 2 a.m. reviewing footage from Grace's first day. He had written the termination letter. It sat open on his laptop, cursor blinking at the end of the first sentence. "Dear Miss Mitchell, effective immediately, your services are no longer required." But he couldn't send it, because something on the security feed had stopped him cold. At 11:23 p.m., Grace had returned to the therapy room, 3 hours after her shift officially ended. She sat on the floor in the center of the room, cross-legged, surrounded by 3 wheelchairs. A small lamp cast warm shadows across her face. She wasn't doing exercises, wasn't following any protocol. She was just sitting with them, humming a melody Marcus didn't recognize. She reached up and touched Lucas's hand. "You did so good today," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you. Do you know that I'm proud of you?" Lucas's fingers curled slightly. Intentional. Grace moved to Nathan, adjusted his blanket, smoothed his hair. "Sweet boy, you're so much stronger than anyone knows. I see it, even when they don't." Then she turned to Adam. She lifted his tiny hand and pressed it against her cheek. Her eyes closed. "I see you," she whispered. "All of you. Every piece. You're not broken, baby. You're just waiting. And I'll wait with you, as long as it takes." A tear slipped down her cheek. Marcus stared at the screen. This woman was crying over his sons at midnight, talking to them like they understood, like they mattered. When was the last time he had sat with them like that? When was the last time he had just been present? He couldn't remember. Marcus closed the laptop, walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Catherine would have hated what he had become, a man who watched his sons through screens, a man so afraid of losing more that he had stopped being present for what remained. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the darkness. "I'm sorry, Katie. I broke my promise. I broke it every single day." He stayed at the window until the sun came up. Then he deleted the termination letter and watched Grace arrive for her second day. The second week changed everything. Dr. Patricia Coleman arrived on Thursday for her weekly assessment. Marcus watched the examination with unusual intensity. Dr. Coleman moved through her routine checks: muscle tone, joint flexibility, reflexes. Her hands paused on Lucas. She examined him again, made notes, moved to Nathan. The same pause, the same careful re-examination. When she finished with all three boys, she called Grace over. They spoke quietly. Marcus leaned toward the monitor, straining to hear. Significant improvement in muscle tone. "This is unusual." "What specific exercises?" Dr. Coleman wrote rapidly on her clipboard. Before she left, she paused at the door and looked back at Grace. "Keep doing whatever you're doing. I'm adjusting the official protocol to include your methods, and I'm recommending new imaging. Something is happening here that I need to document." Marcus sat back in his chair. His hands were shaking. That night he didn't watch footage of his sons. He researched. Neuroplasticity in children with cerebral palsy, early intervention outcomes, motor pattern training. The articles flooded his screen. The infant brain demonstrates extraordinary plasticity. With consistent targeted intervention, children with CP have achieved mobility outcomes far exceeding initial prognosis. Early intervention during the first 3 years of life shows significantly improved results. Repetitive motor pattern training can stimulate the formation of new neural connections, bypassing damaged areas of the brain. Marcus read until his eyes burned. Until 4 a.m., everything Grace had said, everything she had done. It wasn't naive optimism, it was science, and he had never looked. Not once in 2 years, he had taken those first doctors at their word, accepted their verdict like a death sentence, stopped researching, stopped questioning, stopped hoping, because hoping hurt too much. Marcus closed his laptop and sat in darkness. For 2 years, he had poured money into maintaining his son's limitations. The finest wheelchairs, the most advanced equipment, nurses who kept them comfortable in their diagnosis. But he had never once fought for something more. Grace had been here 2 weeks, making $22 an hour, and she had accomplished what his millions couldn't touch, because she believed. And he had stopped believing the day Catherine died. Marcus pressed his hands against his eyes. Shame, deep crushing shame. He had failed his sons, not by loving them too little, but by expecting too little. Catherine would never have accepted it. She would have researched every journal, consulted every specialist, tried every method. She would have fought. But Catherine was gone, and Marcus had buried his fight with her. Until Grace Mitchell walked through his door and showed him what he had forgotten, that giving up was a choice, and he had been making that choice every single day for 2 years. On the last day of the second week, Marcus did something he hadn't done since Catherine died. He left his office and walked to the therapy room. He stood outside the door for 5 minutes listening. Grace was inside with the boys. He could hear her voice through the door. "That's it, Lucas. Your legs know what to do. We just have to remind them." Marcus pushed open the door. Grace looked up. The boys sat in their wheelchairs, arranged in a half circle around her. She was on the floor, cross-legged, with Nathan's small feet in her hands. "Mr. Whitfield." Marcus stood in the doorway, unable to move. He looked at his sons, really looked at them for the first time in months. Lucas was watching him, actually watching him. His eyes tracked Marcus's movement. Nathan's foot twitched in Grace's hands. Adam's head turned toward the sound of his father's voice. 3 responses, 3 signs of life, 3 children who were fighting to exist in a world that had written them off. Marcus felt his chest crack open. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "I don't know how to hope again." Grace looked at him with those steady eyes. "You don't have to know how," she said. "You just have to start." Marcus walked into the room. He knelt beside Grace beside his sons, and for the first time in 2 years, he reached out and took Lucas's hand. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "It's Dad. I'm sorry I've been gone so long, but I'm here now." Lucas's fingers curled around his. And Marcus Whitfield, billionaire control freak, a man who had built walls around his heart to survive, felt those walls begin to crumble. Grace watched him hold his son's hand, tears streaming down his face. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Because sometimes the biggest miracles don't happen all at once. Sometimes they start with a single touch, and Marcus was finally ready to begin. Marcus held Lucas's hand for 17 minutes. He counted every second on the clock above the door because he didn't know what else to do. His son's fingers stayed curled around his small and warm and alive, and Marcus felt like he was learning to breathe for the first time in 2 years. Grace didn't interrupt. She continued working with Nathan and Adam, moving their legs in those rhythmic patterns, humming softly, giving Marcus the space he desperately needed. When he finally let go, his hand was shaking. "I don't know how to be their father anymore," he said without looking at Grace. "I used to imagine teaching them to throw a baseball, taking them to their first day of school, walking them down the aisle at their wedding someday. And then the doctors told me none of that would ever happen, and I just stopped." Grace set Nathan's feet down gently and turned to face him. "What did you stop, Mr. Whitfield?" "Everything. Hoping, trying, being present." He finally looked at her. "I told myself I was protecting them by staying distant, but I was protecting myself. From the pain of loving them and losing them the way I lost Catherine. You haven't lost them. I know, but I've been acting like I already did." Grace stood and walked to where he knelt beside Lucas's wheelchair. "Can I tell you something my grandmother used to say?" Marcus nodded. "She said grief is like an ocean. Sometimes the waves are so big they knock you down and you can't breathe. But if you keep standing up, eventually the waves get smaller. They never stop coming, but you get stronger, strong enough to stand." Marcus looked at his 3 sons, Lucas watching him with curious eyes, Nathan's foot still twitching from the exercises. Adam's head turned toward the sound of voices. "How do I start?" he asked. "How do I become their father again?" Grace smiled. "You already started, Mr. Whitfield. You're here." That night, Marcus didn't go to his office to watch security footage. Instead, he sat in the hallway outside the therapy room, listening to Grace put the boys to bed. She sang to them. A lullaby he didn't recognize, something soft and slow about stars and dreams and morning light. "Good night, Lucas. Good night, Nathan. Good night, Adam. I'll see you in the morning." Marcus heard her footsteps approaching and stood quickly, embarrassed to be caught listening. Grace opened the door and stopped when she saw him. "Mr. Whitfield, I wanted to..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Grace studied his face for a moment. "Would you like to say goodnight to them?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I don't know if I remember how." "It's not something you forget. It's something you choose." She stepped aside, holding the door open. Marcus walked past her into the therapy room. The lights were dimmed. The boys lay in their medical beds, positioned for sleep, their small bodies still beneath soft blankets. He went to Lucas first, stood beside the bed, looking down at his eldest son. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "It's Dad. I know I haven't been around much, but I'm going to try to do better. Okay?" Lucas's eyes were closed, but his hand moved slightly on the blanket. Marcus reached down and touched it. "Good night, Lucas. I love you." The words felt rusty coming out, like he was speaking a language he hadn't used in years. But they were true, and that was enough. He moved to Nathan's bed, then Adam's. The same words, the same gentle touch, the same rusty declarations of love that he should have been saying every night for 2 years. When he finished, he stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his sleeping sons, and felt something shift inside his chest. Not hope, not yet, but something close, the possibility of hope. Grace was waiting in the hallway when he came out. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, For what? For not giving up on them. When everyone else did. When I did. Grace shook her head. I haven't done anything special, Mr. Whitfield. I just showed up. That's all any of us can do. Show up and believe. Marcus thought about that long after she left. Showed up and believed. Such simple words for something so impossibly hard. But maybe that was the secret. Maybe miracles weren't complicated. Maybe they just required someone stubborn enough to keep showing up. The third week brought changes Marcus couldn't ignore. He started coming to the therapy room every morning before Grace arrived, just for a few minutes, just to sit with his sons while they woke up. Lucas always noticed him first. Those blue eyes, Catherine's eyes, would find Marcus across the room and track his movement. "Good morning, buddy," Marcus would say. "Ready for another day?" And Lucas would make a sound, not a word, not yet, but something. A grunt, a hum, an acknowledgement that he heard his father's voice and recognized it. Nathan was louder. He had started making noises during Grace's exercises, vocalizations that seemed to correspond with effort. When Grace moved his legs in the walking pattern, Nathan would grunt with each movement, like he was trying to help. "That's it, sweetheart," Grace would encourage him. "You're working so hard. I'm so proud of you." Adam remained the quietest, but his eyes told a different story. He watched everything with an intensity that seemed far beyond his diagnosis. When Grace read to them, Adam's gaze never left her face. When Marcus spoke, Adam's head would turn toward the sound. "He's taking it all in," Grace told Marcus one morning. "Processing everything. Some children are like that. They observe before they act." "Wait. The doctor said his cognitive function was severely impaired." "The doctor said a lot of things." Marcus couldn't argue with that. On day 18, something happened that changed everything. Grace was doing the afternoon exercises with Lucas. The walking pattern, left, right, left, right. Marcus watched from his usual spot by the door. Grace positioned Lucas's feet on the floor, supporting most of his weight with her hands under his arms. "Okay, sweetheart. Let's try something new. I'm going to hold you up, and I want you to push down with your feet. Can you do that for me?" Push down. Lucas made a sound. Not distress. Effort. His legs trembled. His small face contorted with concentration. And then his right foot pressed against the floor. Marcus's breath stopped. "Yes." Grace's voice cracked with emotion. "Yes, Lucas. You did it. You pushed. Do you feel that? That's your leg working." Lucas made another sound louder this time, something that almost sounded like excitement. His left foot pressed down. Marcus gripped the doorframe so hard his knuckles went white. His son was bearing weight on his legs, not walking, not yet, but bearing weight, using muscles that 17 doctors and specialists had said were too damaged to function. Grace looked up at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "Do you see this?" she whispered. "Do you see what he's doing?" Marcus couldn't speak. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside them. "Lucas," he said, his voice breaking. "Lucas, can you hear me? Can you push again? Push for Daddy?" Lucas's face scrunched with effort. Both feet pressed against the floor. Marcus's vision blurred. He reached out and cupped his son's face in his hands. "That's my boy. That's my strong, brave boy. You did it. You did it." Lucas smiled. Not a reflex, not a random muscle movement. A smile, a real smile directed at his father's face. Marcus pulled his son against his chest and wept. That night, Marcus called Dr. Coleman. "I need to schedule new imaging," he said, "for all 3 boys as soon as possible." Dr. Coleman was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Whitfield, I was actually going to call you. I've been reviewing my notes from the past few weeks, and I have to admit I'm seeing changes I didn't expect." "What kind of changes?" "Muscle tone improvements, increased responsiveness, voluntary movements that shouldn't be possible given their initial scans." She paused. "I don't want to give you false hope." "Don't say that." Marcus's voice was sharper than he intended. "Don't tell me hope is false. I've spent 2 years believing that hope was the enemy. I was wrong. Hope is the only thing that's ever changed anything. Dr. Coleman was silent. Schedule the imaging, Marcus continued. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, I need to know what's actually happening inside my son's brains. Not what should be happening, what is happening. I'll make the calls tonight. We can probably get them in within 2 weeks. Make it 1 week. I'll pay whatever premium is necessary. Marcus hung up and sat in the darkness of his office. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't pull up the security cameras. Instead, he walked down the hall to the therapy room. The boys were asleep, positioned in their beds, their faces peaceful. Marcus pulled a chair between Lucas and Nathan's beds and sat down. "Hey guys," he whispered. "It's Dad. I know you're sleeping, but I wanted to talk to you for a minute." He looked at each of his sons in turn. "Your mom used to talk to you before you were born. Every night she'd put her hands on her belly and tell you stories about our life, about how much we wanted you, about all the things we were going to do together." His voice cracked. "I stopped doing that after she died. I stopped talking to you, stopped believing in you, stopped being your dad, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the time I wasted." He reached out and took Lucas's hand in his, right Nathan's hand in his left. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens with the scans, whatever the doctors say, I'm going to fight for you. The way Grace fights for you. The way your mom would have fought for you." He squeezed their small hands gently. "I love you, boys. All 3 of you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for the time I lost." He stayed until dawn, holding his son's hands, watching them breathe, rediscovering what it meant to be a father. The 4th week brought the first crisis. It happened on a Tuesday, 3 days before the scheduled brain imaging. Marcus was in his office when his phone rang. Grace's extension. "Mr. Whitfield, you need to come to the therapy room, now." Her voice was calm, but urgent. Marcus ran. When he burst through the door, he found Grace kneeling beside Adam's wheelchair. The smallest of the triplets was convulsing his tiny body. Rigid, his eyes rolled back. "What happened?" Marcus dropped to his knees beside them. "Seizure. Started about 90 seconds ago. I've already called 911. "Has this happened before?" "Not that I've seen. Check his medical records for history." Marcus's hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone and accessed the digital files. Adam's body continued to convulse. Lucas and Nathan were both awake, their eyes fixed on their brother. Nathan was making distressed sounds. Lucas's face was contorted with something that looked like fear. "It's okay, boys," Grace said, her voice steady, even as she monitored Adam's breathing. "Your brother is going to be okay. The doctors are coming." Marcus found the file. No seizure history, nothing documented. It could be breakthrough activity. Sometimes children with CP develop seizures as their brains mature. It's not uncommon. Not uncommon, but terrifying nonetheless. Adam's convulsions slowed. His body began to relax. His eyes rolled forward. "He's coming out of it," Grace said. "Adam, sweetheart, can you hear me?" Adam's eyes focused on her face. He made a small sound, scared, confused. "You're okay, baby. You're safe. I'm right here." The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. Marcus rode with Adam while Grace stayed with Lucas and Nathan. The hospital was a blur of lights and voices and machines, and Marcus held his smallest son's hand through all of it. "Dad," Adam said. Marcus froze. It was barely audible, slurred, more breath than word, but it was there. "Dad." Marcus leaned closer, his heart pounding. "Adam, did you say Dad?" Adam's eyes found his father's face. "Dad." Marcus's tears fell onto his son's hospital gown. "Yes, baby. Yes. I'm Dad. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." The doctors ran tests for 3 hours. EEG, CT scan, blood work. When Dr. Harrison, the pediatric neurologist on call, came to speak with Marcus, her expression was puzzled. "Mr. Whitfield, I have to be honest with you. These results are unexpected." "Is he okay? Is Adam going to be okay?" The seizure appears to be an isolated incident. We'll monitor him, but I don't see signs of ongoing seizure disorder." She paused. "But that's not what's unexpected." "Then what?" Dr. Harrison pulled up the CT scan on her tablet. "These are your son's brain images from 18 months ago, and these are the images we just took." Marcus looked at the two scans side by side. Even to his untrained eye, they looked different. "The areas of damage that we documented in the initial scans," Dr. Harrison pointed to several spots on the old image. "They're still there, but look at this." She pointed to the new scan. "See these pathways, these neural connections that seem to route around the damaged areas. Those weren't there before. Your son's brain is literally rewiring itself." Marcus stared at the screen. "Is that possible?" "In adults, rarely. But in young children, especially with intensive early intervention." Dr. Harrison shook her head slowly. "I've read about cases like this, but I've never seen one firsthand. Whatever you're doing with your sons, Mr. Whitfield, don't stop, because this is remarkable." Marcus called Grace from the hospital. "He spoke," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Adam spoke. He said, 'Dad.' He said my name." He could hear Grace crying on the other end of the line. "I knew it," she whispered. "I knew they were in there. I knew they were fighting. The doctor showed me his brain scans. His neural pathways are changing. His brain is rewiring itself around the damage. The other boys, Lucas and Nathan, we're scheduling their scans for tomorrow. The doctor wants to compare all three." Grace was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Whitfield, I need to tell you something." "What?" "While you were at the hospital, Lucas stood up." Marcus's legs gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the hospital floor. "What did you say?" "He stood up, by himself. He pulled himself up on the edge of his wheelchair tray, and he stood for 4 seconds before he sat back down." "That's not possible." "I have it on video. I recorded it on my phone." Marcus closed his eyes. His sons were speaking, standing, rewiring their own brains to overcome damage that 17 specialists had said was permanent. And it was happening because one woman refused to believe the word impossible. "Grace," Marcus said quietly, "thank you for everything, for believing when I couldn't, for fighting when I gave up. You didn't give up, Mr. Whitfield. You just needed someone to show you the way back. I was so afraid of hope, so afraid it would destroy me if it didn't work out." And now, Marcus opened his eyes and looked at Adam sleeping peacefully in the hospital bed, his small chest rising and falling. "Now I'm more afraid of what I almost missed. I almost missed watching my sons learn to live. I almost missed being their father. And if you hadn't walked through my door, but I did walk through your door, that's what matters." Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I'm bringing Adam home tomorrow, and then we're going to fight like hell for all three of them." "We already are, Mr. Whitfield. We already are." The next week was a blur of tests and results and revelations. All three boys showed the same pattern of neural rewiring, new pathways forming around damaged areas, increased activity in motor control regions, changes that the doctors described with words like unprecedented and extraordinary. Dr. Chen, the neurologist Marcus had contacted after his late-night research, flew in from Johns Hopkins to examine the boys personally. She spent 2 full days with them, observing Grace's techniques, reviewing the imaging, conducting her own assessments. On the evening of the second day, she asked to speak with Marcus privately. "I've been studying pediatric neuroplasticity for 23 years, Dr. Chen said. I've seen remarkable cases, children who defied their prognoses, families who refused to accept limitations. But I've never seen anything quite like this." She leaned forward. "Your son's initial diagnosis was severe. The damage documented on their original scans would typically result in minimal functional improvement, even with intensive intervention. And yet their brains are actively rebuilding, creating new pathways, compensating for damaged areas in ways we rarely see, even in the most responsive patients." She paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. The caregiver you hired, Grace Mitchell, What made you choose her? Marcus thought about the question for a long moment. I didn't choose her. Not really. I was looking for someone who would follow orders, maintain distance, treat my sons like patients instead of people. Grace was the opposite of what I thought I wanted. Then why did you keep her? Marcus remembered the first day. Lucas turning his head toward music, Nathan's fingers twitching, Adam's eyes opening. Because she made me see what I'd stopped looking for. She made me believe again. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. In my research, I've found that the most successful interventions share one common factor. It's not the specific technique or the equipment or even the expertise of the medical team. It's belief. Someone has to believe the child can improve, truly believe it for the brain to respond. It's as if the child picks up on that belief and starts believing too. That sounds unscientific. It sounds unscientific, but I've seen it too many times to dismiss it. The brain is more connected to emotion than we like to admit. When a child feels truly seen, truly believed in, something changes, not just psychologically, physiologically. Marcus looked toward the therapy room where Grace was working with the boys. So you're saying Grace's belief in my sons is literally changing their brains? I'm saying it's part of the equation. The techniques she uses are evidence-based. The repetition, the motor pattern training, the early intervention during the critical window of neuroplasticity. But the belief, that's the catalyst. That's what makes the difference between a child who improves modestly and a child who defies every expectation. Marcus absorbed this for a moment. What can we expect going forward? Realistically. Dr. Chen smiled. Mr. Whitfield, I stopped making predictions about children like yours a long time ago. What I will say is this: every limitation we documented in those initial scans needs to be questioned. Your sons have already proven that their brains are capable of remarkable adaptation. I see no reason why that adaptation should stop. So they could walk, really walk. I think, Dr. Chen said carefully, that we should stop asking what they can't do and start asking what they will do, and then we should give them every opportunity to surprise us. That night, Marcus sat with Grace after the boys were asleep. They were in the kitchen, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them. Dr. Chen thinks you're the key to all of this, Marcus said. The belief you brought, the way you see them. Grace shook her head. I'm not the key. I'm just the first person who looked for the lock. What does that mean? Your sons were always capable of this, Mr. Whitfield. The potential was always there waiting. It just needed someone to see it, someone to call it out, someone to say, I know you're in there, and I'm going to wait until you're ready to show me. But the other caregivers saw the diagnosis, the wheelchairs, the limitations. They saw what your sons couldn't do. I see what they can do. That's the only difference. Marcus wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, staring into the dark liquid. My wife, Catherine, she would have seen what you see. She always believed in impossible things. Tell me about her. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. She was the bravest person I ever knew. Not brave like fearless, brave like she felt the fear and did things anyway. We tried for 6 years to have children, 4 rounds of IVF, 3 miscarriages. Every time she grieved, and then she got back up and tried again. His voice cracked. When she finally got pregnant with triplets, she cried for 2 days. Happy tears. She said God had made us wait so long because he was sending us 3 blessings instead of 1. Grace's eyes were wet, and then she died giving birth to them, 47 minutes after Adam was born. She never even got to hold them. I'm so sorry. For 2 years I blamed the boys, not consciously. I never would have admitted it. But somewhere deep down I blamed them for taking her from me, and I kept my distance because loving them felt like betraying her somehow. That's not true. I know that now. Loving them is the opposite of betraying her. It's honoring her. It's keeping the promise I made when I held her hand and told her I'd take care of them. Marcus looked at Grace. You helped me see that. You helped me find my way back to them. Grace reached across the table and touched his hand. You found your own way back, Mr. Whitfield. I just kept the door open." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus said, "I want to do something for the boys, for Catherine's memory." "What?" "The nursery she designed, the one I closed up after she died. I want to reopen it, make it their room again, the way she intended." Grace smiled. "I think that's a beautiful idea. Will you help me? I don't think I can face it alone." "Of course, whenever you're ready." Marcus nodded, a weight lifting from his chest. He wasn't ready yet, but soon. And when he was, he wouldn't have to face it alone. 6 weeks after Grace Mitchell walked through his front door, Marcus Whitfield experienced something he thought he'd never feel again. Pure, uncomplicated joy. It was a Thursday afternoon. Grace was working with all 3 boys at once, something she'd started doing as their coordination improved. Lucas was actually standing supported by parallel bars Grace had ordered from a pediatric equipment supplier. Nathan was on the floor beside him, weight on his hands and knees, rocking back and forth in what Grace called a pre-crawling pattern. Adam sat in a modified chair watching his brothers with those intense, observant eyes, his hands gripping a therapy ball he was supposed to squeeze for strength exercises, and then Adam squeezed the ball so hard it shot out of his hands and bounced across the room. Everyone froze. Then Nathan laughed. It wasn't a small sound this time. It was a full, genuine, belly-deep laugh that filled the entire room. Lucas started laughing too. And Adam, surprised by his own strength, looked at his empty hands and then at his brothers, and his face split into the widest smile Marcus had ever seen. Grace was laughing and crying at the same time. Marcus stood in the doorway watching his 3 sons laugh together for the first time, and felt something in his chest that had been frozen for 2 years finally completely melt. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. He walked into the room and knelt beside his sons. "Look at you 3, he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Look at what you're doing." Lucas reached out with one hand, still gripping the parallel bar with the other, and touched his father's face. "Dad," he said clearly. "Dad." Nathan stopped laughing long enough to look at his father. "Da," he managed. Not quite as clear as Lucas, but unmistakable. And Adam, the quiet observer, the one who watched everything and said little, opened his mouth. "Daddy." 2 syllables, clear as a bell. Marcus gathered all 3 of his sons into his arms, knocking over the parallel bars, disturbing Grace's carefully arranged equipment, not caring about any of it. "I love you," he said. "I love you all so much, and I'm so proud of you. Your mom would be so proud of you." He held them for a long time, and when he finally looked up at Grace, he saw her standing at the edge of the room, tears streaming down her face, watching the moment she had fought so hard to make possible. "Thank you," Marcus mouthed silently. Grace just nodded her smile, saying everything words couldn't. That night, Marcus made a decision. He walked to the nursery Catherine had designed, the room he hadn't entered in 18 months. He turned the handle. The door swung open. Dust, cobwebs. The 3 cribs still arranged in their half circle. The mobile of silver stars hanging motionless. Catherine's rocking chair in the corner, the unfinished blanket draped over the arm. On the wall, clouds she had painted on a pale blue ceiling. Soft white clouds that seemed to float. Marcus stepped inside. He touched the edge of Lucas's crib, then Nathan's, then Adam's. "I'm ready now," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm ready to bring them home." He picked up the unfinished blanket Catherine had been knitting, blue and white stripes, for Lucas. He pressed it against his chest. "I kept my promise, Katie. It took me longer than it should have, but I kept it." He sat in the rocking chair holding his wife's last gift and began to plan. Tomorrow, he would call the contractors. Tomorrow, he would start transforming this room into something new. Tomorrow, he would take another step toward the life Catherine had dreamed of for their sons. But tonight, he sat in the dark and let himself grieve and hope and believe all at the same time. Because sometimes that's what healing looks like. Not a straight line, but a series of steps backward and forward leading somewhere you couldn't have imagined when you started. Marcus rocked in the chair until midnight. Then he folded the blanket carefully and walked out of the nursery. He didn't close the door behind him. That room had been closed for too long. It was time to let the light back in. 8 weeks since Grace arrived, and Marcus finally opened the nursery door with his sons beside him. The contractors had finished 3 days ago. Fresh paint on the walls, but Catherine's clouds remained on the ceiling. New beds arranged in the same half-circle she had designed. The mobile of silver stars hung above them, catching light from the window she had insisted on because babies need sunshine to grow. Grace pushed Lucas's wheelchair through the doorway first. Nathan came next, then Adam. Marcus held his breath. Lucas looked up at the clouds on the ceiling. His eyes widened. His hand lifted, pointing upward. "Pretty," he said. His third word. After Dad and Mama, which he had started saying last week, confusing Grace for his mother, until Marcus explained through tears that it was the highest compliment his son could give. "Your mom painted those," Marcus said, kneeling beside Lucas's wheelchair. "Before you were born, she wanted you to dream about flying." Nathan was looking around the room with that stubborn expression he got when he was processing new information. Adam's eyes moved from object to object, cataloging everything, storing it away. "This is your room now," Marcus continued. "The room your mom designed for you. I should have brought you here a long time ago. I'm sorry it took me so long." Grace squeezed his shoulder. "You brought them now. That's what matters." That night, the boys slept in their nursery for the first time. Marcus sat in Catherine's rocking chair, watching them breathe, and felt her presence so strongly he almost turned around to look for her. "They're here, Katie," he whispered. "They're home." He fell asleep in the chair and woke at dawn to find Lucas watching him with those blue eyes that looked exactly like his mother's. "Dad," Lucas said softly. "Hey, buddy. Good morning." "Morning." Marcus's heart stopped. "Did you just say morning?" Lucas smiled. "Morning, Dad." 4 words now. His son had 4 words. Marcus laughed and cried at the same time, and Lucas laughed too, not understanding why his father was so emotional but catching the joy anyway. The second month brought a new challenge. Dr. Chen called on a Tuesday with news that made Marcus's blood run cold. "The medical board is reviewing your son's case. They want to verify the imaging results independently." "Why?" "Because the results are unprecedented, Mr. Whitfield. Several neurologists have raised questions about the validity of the scans. They're suggesting that either the original diagnosis was wrong or the new imaging is flawed." Marcus gripped the phone so hard his hand ached. "Are you saying they think we're lying?" "I'm saying they want confirmation. They're sending a team next week to conduct their own assessments. And if they decide the original diagnosis was wrong, what happens to the protocols we've been following, the treatments, the insurance coverage?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "If they determine the original diagnosis was incorrect, it could affect everything. Your insurance claims for the past 2 years could be questioned. The specialized equipment, the caregivers, all of it." Marcus closed his eyes. "This isn't about medical accuracy, is it? This is about money. Someone doesn't want to pay for what my sons need. I can't speak to motivations, but I can tell you that I'll be there during the assessment, and I'll fight for your sons every step of the way." "Thank you, Dr. Chen." "Don't thank me yet. Just keep doing what you're doing. The best evidence is progress." Marcus hung up and stared at the wall. After everything they'd been through, after all the progress the boys had made, someone wanted to take it away. Someone wanted to rewrite history and pretend his sons had never been as damaged as they were, just to avoid paying for their recovery. He walked to the nursery and found Grace reading to the boys. "We have a problem," he said. Grace looked up, saw his face, and closed the book immediately. "What happened?" Marcus told her everything. Grace's expression shifted from concern to anger to determination. "They can assess all they want," she said. "Those boys are living proof of what's possible. No medical board can look at them now and deny what's happened. They can try. They can claim the original diagnosis was wrong. The original diagnosis was made by 17 specialists over 6 weeks. It was confirmed multiple times. How can they possibly argue it was wrong? Because arguing it was wrong means they don't have to pay for 2 years of care and equipment. because arguing it was wrong means they can deny coverage for everything the boys will need going forward. Grace stood up, her hands clenched at her sides. Then we document everything. Every milestone, every word, every step. We create a record so complete that no one can question it. Marcus looked at his sons. Lucas was trying to turn the pages of the book Grace had been reading. Nathan was watching his brother with competitive intensity. Adam was staring at his own hands, flexing his fingers in the exercises Grace had taught him. "We have 6 days," Marcus said. 6 days to prepare for an assessment that could change everything. Grace nodded. "Then we better get started." The next 6 days were the most intense of Marcus's life. Grace worked with the boys from morning until night, not pushing them beyond their limits, but documenting every capability they had developed, every word, every movement, every response. Marcus hired a videographer to record everything. He brought in Dr. Coleman and 2 other specialists to conduct independent assessments and provide written reports. He called his lawyers and had them prepare for every possible scenario. And he prayed. For the first time since Catherine's death, Marcus Whitfield got on his knees and prayed. "Please," he whispered in the darkness of the nursery, "please don't let them take this away. My sons have fought so hard. Please don't let it be for nothing." The night before the assessment, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in the therapy room at 3 a.m., surrounded by equipment and documentation and evidence of his son's progress. Grace found him there an hour later. "You should rest," she said. "Tomorrow is important." "I can't stop thinking about what happens if they rule against us." Grace sat down beside him. "What's the worst case?" "They revoke the disability classification. Insurance stops covering the specialized care. The equipment, the therapies, everything we've built, it all becomes out of pocket." "You can afford it." "It's not about the money." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "It's about legitimacy. If they say the original diagnosis was wrong, it becomes a story about a rich man who gamed the system, about doctors who made mistakes, about a caregiver who got lucky. That's not what this is. I know that, you know that, but the world won't know that, and my sons will grow up with people questioning whether they ever really overcame anything or whether they were just misdiagnosed to begin with." Grace was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Whitfield, can I tell you something my grandmother said when Danny was first diagnosed?" "Of course." "She said, the only opinion that matters is the one your child has of himself. Everyone else can believe whatever they want, but if Danny believes he can walk, he'll walk, and nothing anyone says will change that." Marcus looked at her. "You think my son's self-belief will be enough?" "I think your sons don't know there's supposed to be a limit. They don't know they were diagnosed as hopeless. They just know that every day they can do a little more than they could yesterday. That's their reality, and no medical board can take that away from them." And Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. "When did you get so wise?" Grace smiled. "I had a good teacher, several actually. My grandmother, my brother, and 3 little boys who remind me every day that impossible is just a word." Marcus reached out and took her hand. "Thank you. For everything. For believing when I couldn't. For fighting when I gave up. For being here." Grace squeezed his hand. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Mr. Whitfield. I knew it the moment I walked through your door." They sat together until dawn, watching the light slowly fill the room. And when the sun rose, they were ready. The assessment team arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. 3 neurologists, 2 physical therapists, and a representative from the insurance company. They came with clipboards and skepticism and the authority to change everything. Dr. Harrison led the team. She was efficient and clinical, and she didn't smile when she shook Marcus's hand. "Mr. Whitfield, we're here to conduct a comprehensive evaluation of your son's current status and compare it to the original diagnosis. We'll need several hours." "Take as long as you need. My sons have nothing to hide." Dr. Harrison raised an eyebrow at his tone, but didn't comment. They started with Lucas. Grace had dressed him in a simple blue outfit that didn't hide any of his capabilities. He sat in his wheelchair watching the strangers with those observant eyes. "Lucas," Dr. Harrison said, "can you tell me your name?" Lucas looked at his father. Marcus nodded. "Lucas," his son said clearly. "I'm Lucas." Dr. Harrison made a note. "And can you tell me who this is?" She pointed at Marcus. "Daddy. And this," she pointed at Grace. "Mama Grace." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. Lucas had started calling her that last week. It was the first time he'd said it in front of strangers. The assessment continued. They tested Lucas's motor function, his cognitive response, his communication skills. They photographed his muscle tone and measured his range of motion. Then they moved to Nathan. Nathan had always been the stubborn one, the fighter. When Dr. Harrison asked him to demonstrate his capabilities, he crossed his arms and shook his head. "Nathan," Grace said gently, "can you show the doctors how strong you are?" "No." "Please, for me." Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Then he uncrossed his arms, grabbed the edge of his wheelchair tray, and pulled himself to a standing position. Everyone in the room went silent. He stood for 7 seconds. Then he sat back down and crossed his arms again. "Strong," he said defiantly. "Very strong." Dr. Harrison's expression shifted. For the first time, Marcus saw uncertainty in her eyes. The assessment of Adam was the most revealing. Adam had always been the quiet one, the observer. But in the past few weeks, he had started surprising everyone. "Adam," Dr. Harrison said, "can you count for me?" Adam looked at her with those intense eyes. "1, he said. 2, 3, 4, 5. He kept going to 10. Dr. Harrison's pen stopped moving. That's not consistent with the original cognitive assessment." "No," Marcus said quietly. "It's not." The evaluation took 5 hours. When it was over, Dr. Harrison asked to speak with Marcus privately. They walked to his office. She sat across from his desk, the same chair where Grace had sat 3 months ago. "Mr. Whitfield, I have to be honest with you." Marcus braced himself. "I came here expecting to find evidence of misdiagnosis. The original imaging and assessments were so severe that the progress reported seemed impossible. I assumed there had been an error somewhere. And now," Dr. Harrison set down her clipboard, "now I've seen your sons. I've examined them myself, and I can't explain what I'm seeing." "What are you seeing?" "I'm seeing 3 children who were correctly diagnosed with severe spastic quadriplegia 2 years ago. The original imaging was accurate. The assessments were thorough. Your sons had significant brain damage that should have resulted in minimal function. But somehow their brains have rewired. They've created new neural pathways around the damaged areas. They're speaking standing, demonstrating cognitive abilities that should be impossible given their original condition." Marcus waited. "I've been a neurologist for 31 years. I've never seen anything like this." She paused. "I'm recommending that the board confirm the original diagnosis was accurate and that your son's progress represents genuine neurological improvement, not misdiagnosis." Marcus's breath left his body. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank whatever you're doing, and don't stop doing it." She stood and extended her hand. "Your sons are remarkable, Mr. Whitfield, and so is the woman who's been working with them. I'd like to bring some colleagues to observe her techniques if you're willing. What's happening here could help other children." Marcus shook her hand. "Grace can decide that, but I think she'd say yes." Dr. Harrison nodded and walked toward the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. "One more thing. The insurance representative wanted to find a reason to deny coverage. He wanted me to support the misdiagnosis theory. I told him I would testify in court, if necessary, that your son's progress is genuine and their original condition was accurately documented." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Why?" "Because I became a doctor to help children, not to help insurance companies save money. Your sons deserve every resource available to them, and I'll make sure they get it." She left. Marcus sat alone in his office for a long time. Then he walked to the nursery where Grace was playing with the boys. "It's over," he said. "They confirmed the original diagnosis was accurate. They confirmed the progress is real. Insurance will continue coverage. Grace looked up at him, her eyes filling with tears. We won. We won. Lucas looked at his father. Won. Marcus knelt beside his son's wheelchair. Yeah, buddy, we won. You won. Lucas smiled and reached out to touch his father's face. Good, he said. Very good. That night, Marcus did something he hadn't done since Catherine died. He threw a party, not a big one. Just Grace, Dr. Coleman, and a few staff members who had been with the family through everything. They gathered in the nursery surrounded by Catherine's painted clouds and celebrated the boys' victory. Marcus raised a glass. 2.5 years ago, I lost my wife. I thought I lost everything. And then 3 little boys showed me I still had something worth fighting for. He looked at Lucas, Nathan, and Adam. I almost gave up on them. I almost gave up on hope. And if it wasn't for one woman who refused to accept impossible, I might have missed the greatest miracle of my life. He turned to Grace. You saved my sons. You saved me. And there's no way I can ever repay you for that. Grace was crying. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Whitfield. Watching those boys grow is the only payment I need. Dr. Coleman raised her glass. To the Whitfield boys, may they continue to prove us all wrong. Everyone drank, and in the corner positioned in their special chairs so they could see everyone, 3 little boys watched their father smile for the first time in years. The celebration was still winding down when Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Marcus Whitfield? Speaking. Mr. Whitfield, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm a producer with National News Network. We've received information about your son's case and their remarkable recovery. We'd like to do a feature story. Marcus's stomach dropped. How did you get this information? I'm not at liberty to say, but we have documentation of your son's original diagnosis and their recent assessment results. This is an incredible story of hope and medical progress. We think the public would be inspired. Marcus gripped the phone. I'm not interested. Mr. Whitfield, this story is going to be told one way or another. Wouldn't you rather control the narrative? I said I'm not interested. Our sources are prepared to speak on record. Former caregivers, medical professionals who were involved in the original diagnosis. With or without your cooperation, this story will air. Marcus felt cold rage settle in his chest. Former caregivers. The 11 people who had betrayed him. One of them had sold information to the press again. If you air anything about my sons without my consent, I will sue your network into oblivion. Mr. Whitfield, this is a matter of public interest. Your son's case could give hope to thousands of families. Why wouldn't you want to share that? Because my sons are not public property. Their medical information is private, and anyone who violates that privacy will face consequences. He hung up. Grace appeared at his side. What's wrong? Someone leaked information to the press. A news network wants to do a story on the boys. Grace's face went pale. Who would do that? One of the former caregivers, or someone at the insurance company, or the hospital, anyone who had access to their records. What are you going to do? Marcus looked at his son, still oblivious in their corner, watching the adults with curious eyes. Whatever I have to do to protect them. He spent the next week in full crisis mode. His lawyers sent cease and desist letters to the network. His security team traced the leak to a former employee at the imaging center where the boys' brain scans were conducted. He filed criminal complaints for HIPAA violations, but the damage was already spreading. By the time Marcus contained the national story, local news had picked up fragments. Social media was buzzing with rumors. Strangers were posting outside the mansion gates with cameras. The boys couldn't leave the house without being photographed. Marcus installed additional security. He upgraded the perimeter cameras. He considered moving the family to a different state entirely. Grace found him in his office at midnight, surrounded by legal documents and security reports. You can't control everything, Mr. Whitfield. I can try. At what cost? You haven't spent time with the boys in 3 days. You're back to watching them through cameras instead of being with them. This is exactly what you swore you wouldn't do again. Marcus looked at her, saw the concern in her eyes, saw the truth he'd been avoiding. I'm trying to protect them. You're hiding from them. There's a difference. Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. What do you want me to do, Grace? Let the world tear them apart. Let strangers exploit their story. Let everyone with a camera profit from their struggle. Grace didn't flinch. I want you to remember why you're fighting. It's not to control the narrative. It's not to punish the people who betrayed you. It's to give your sons the best life possible. And right now you're so focused on the threat that you're missing the blessing. Marcus stared at her. Lucas took 3 steps today, Grace said quietly. Unassisted. 3 steps. And you weren't there to see it. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? 3 steps. He was holding the parallel bars, and then he let go and he walked. 3 steps before he fell. Nathan caught him. Brothers helping each other just like their mother wanted. While Marcus felt his legs go weak. I missed it. You were on a conference call with your lawyers about camera footage from a journalist who was lurking outside the gate. Marcus pressed his hands against his eyes. He had done it again. Focused on threat instead of blessing. Control instead of presence. Fear instead of love. Catherine would be ashamed of him. I'm sorry, he whispered. I keep making the same mistake. Grace walked around the desk and stood in front of him. You're not making a mistake. You're grieving. You're scared. You're human. But your sons need you present, not protected. They need their father in the room, not watching from a screen. Marcus looked up at her. How do you always know the right thing to say? I don't. I just say what I see. And what I see is a good man who's been through hell and is still learning how to walk through the fire. Give yourself grace, Mr. Whitfield. It's a process. Marcus nodded slowly. Will you show me the video of Lucas walking? Grace smiled. I'll do better than that. He's been waiting all day to show you himself. She held out her hand. Marcus took it and let her lead him out of the office, away from the legal documents and security reports and endless strategies for control, toward his sons, toward the only thing that really mattered. In the nursery, Lucas was awake despite the late hour. His eyes lit up when he saw his father. Daddy, watch. He grabbed the edge of his bed and pulled himself up. His small legs trembled, his face twisted with concentration, and then he let go. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. He fell forward, and Marcus caught him. I did it, Lucas said breathlessly. I walked, Daddy, I walked. Marcus held his son against his chest, tears streaming down his face. You did it, buddy. You really did it. He looked up at Grace, who was watching from the doorway, with tears in her own eyes. And in that moment, Marcus understood. The press, the lawyers, the security threats, none of it mattered. Only this mattered. His son in his arms. Progress that couldn't be quantified. Love that couldn't be contained. He had spent 2 years trying to control everything. And the only thing he really needed was to let go. The next morning, Marcus made a decision. He called Sarah Chen at National News Network. You want a story, he said. I'll give you one, but on my terms. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm listening. I'll do 1 interview. 1. Grace and I together with the boys present. No medical records discussed, no exploitation of their condition. Just a story about hope and the people who never gave up. And in exchange, you drop the angle about former caregivers and leaked documents. You don't mention the investigation. And you donate 50% of your advertising revenue from the segment to the Pediatric Cerebral Palsy Foundation of my choosing. Sarah Chen was quiet for a long moment. You're asking a lot, Mr. Whitfield. I'm offering a lot. A billionaire, 3 miracle children, and a story that will make your ratings soar. Take it or leave it. I'll take it. Good. My people will be in touch about arrangements. Marcus hung up. Grace stood in the doorway watching him. You're sure about this? No, but I'm done hiding. The world is going to tell this story whether I like it or not. At least this way I can make sure it's told right. Grace nodded. Then let's make sure they see what we see. And what's that? Grace smiled. That miracles are possible, that love is the most powerful medicine, and that 3 little boys who were told they'd never walk are going to prove everyone wrong. Marcus looked toward the nursery where his sons were waking up to a new day. Yeah, he said quietly. Let's show them that. The interview was scheduled for a Friday morning, 3 weeks after Marcus made the deal with National News Network. Sarah Chen arrived with a crew of 12 people. Cameras, lights, sound equipment, makeup artists. They transformed the living room into a studio while Marcus watched from the doorway, fighting every instinct that screamed at him to cancel everything. Grace found him there, paralyzed with doubt. "You can still back out," she said quietly. "No, I can't. If I back out now, they'll run the story anyway. At least this way we control what they see." "We don't control anything, Mr. Whitfield. We just choose how we show up." Marcus looked at her. "When did you stop calling me Mr. Whitfield in your head?" Grace blushed. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You've been calling me Marcus in your mind for weeks. I can hear it in your voice." Grace was quiet for a moment. "I call you Mr. Whitfield because you're my employer, because there are boundaries that matter, because I don't want to confuse what we have." "And what do we have?" Before Grace could answer, Sarah Chen appeared in the hallway. "Mr. Whitfield, we're ready for you." Marcus held Grace's gaze for one more second. Then he straightened his shoulders and walked toward the lights. The interview lasted 3 hours. Sarah Chen was professional, thorough, and surprisingly compassionate. She asked about Catherine first, giving Marcus space to tell the story of how they met, how they struggled, how they finally conceived the triplets after 6 years of trying. "She was everything to me," Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the emotion underneath. "When she died, I thought my life was over. I didn't realize it was just beginning in a different way." "Tell me about the diagnosis," Sarah Chen said. Marcus described those first weeks. The NICU, the specialists, the words that fell like hammers, severe, permanent, unlikely, never. "I accepted what they told me," he admitted. "I stopped fighting before I even started. I thought I was protecting myself from disappointment, but I was really just giving up on my sons." "What changed?" Marcus looked at Grace, who sat beside him on the couch the boys arranged in their special chairs nearby. "She changed everything. Grace walked into my house and refused to see my sons as hopeless cases. She saw them as children who needed someone to believe in them." Sarah Chen turned to Grace. "Miss Mitchell, what made you believe when everyone else had given up?" Grace took a breath. "I saw what no one else was looking for. Small movements, responses to music, the way their eyes tracked me across the room. They were fighting to connect with the world. They just needed someone to meet them halfway." "And Mr. Whitfield, he wasn't initially supportive of your methods." Grace smiled. "Mr. Whitfield was terrified. He'd been hurt so many times by people who promised hope and delivered betrayal. He had every reason not to trust me, but he gave me a chance anyway, and that's all I needed." "Let's talk about the boys," Sarah Chen said. "Lucas, can you tell me your name?" Lucas looked at the camera, then at his father. Marcus nodded encouragingly. "Lucas David Whitfield," he said clearly. "I'm 3 years old. I can walk." The crew went silent. One of the cameramen wiped his eyes. "Can you show us?" Sarah Chen asked gently. Lucas looked at Grace. She nodded. He grabbed the arm of his chair and pulled himself up. His legs trembled but held. Then he let go. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4, 5. He walked across the room to his father and climbed into Marcus's lap. "I did it, Daddy." Marcus held him tight, tears streaming openly down his face. "You did it, buddy. You showed everyone." The interview aired 2 weeks later. Marcus sat in his living room with Grace and the boys, watching the broadcast on the largest screen in the house. Sarah Chen had kept her word. The story was respectful, hopeful, and focused entirely on the boys' progress and Grace's techniques. No mention of the leaks, no interviews with bitter former caregivers, just a story about miracles and the people who made them possible. By the time the segment ended, Marcus's phone was already buzzing. Texts from his brother David, emails from colleagues he hadn't spoken to in years, notifications from social media accounts he didn't even know existed. "It's everywhere," Grace said, scrolling through her own phone. "People are sharing the video of Lucas walking. It has 2 million views already." Marcus looked at his son, who was playing with his brothers on the floor, oblivious to the attention. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know yet, but look at the comments. She handed him her phone. My son has CP. This gives me so much hope. I'm crying. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That little boy walking made me believe in miracles again. Marcus scrolled through hundreds of messages. Thousands. People from all over the world sharing their own stories, asking for advice, thanking him and Grace for giving them hope. How do we respond to all this? He asked. We don't have to respond to anything, but maybe we should think about how to help. What do you mean? Grace looked at the boys. What happened here? What's happening with Lucas and Nathan and Adam? It's not magic. It's science combined with belief. It's techniques that other parents could learn. It's hope that other families deserve to have. You want to teach others? I want to share what we know. If our story can help even one other child, isn't that worth something? Marcus watched his sons play. Lucas was trying to teach Nathan the walking pattern, holding his brother's hands and moving his feet the way Grace had done for months. We could start a foundation, Marcus said slowly. Fund research. Train caregivers in your methods. Help families who can't afford the equipment and specialists. Grace's eyes lit up. You would do that? I would do anything for my sons. And if doing something for them means helping other children, then yes, I would do that. The next month was a whirlwind. Marcus established the Catherine Whitfield Foundation with an initial donation of $50 million. He hired Dr. Chen as the medical director and brought in experts from around the world to develop training programs based on Grace's techniques. Applications poured in from families desperate for help, stories of children trapped in bodies that wouldn't cooperate, parents who had been told there was nothing more to do, siblings who watched their brothers and sisters struggle every day. Marcus read every application personally. One night, Grace found him in his office at 2 a.m. surrounded by files. You need to sleep. I can't. There are too many of them, too many children who need help. How do we choose who to help first? Grace sat beside him and took one of the files from his hands. You can't save everyone, Marcus. It was the first time she had called him by his first name. Marcus looked at her. You called me Marcus. Grace's cheeks flushed. I'm sorry. It slipped out. Don't apologize. I've been waiting to hear you say it. They looked at each other in the dim light of the office. Grace, I need to tell you something. Marcus, I don't think... Please, let me say this. Grace went quiet. When Catherine died, I thought I would never feel anything again. I built walls around my heart so high that no one could reach me. Not my sons, not my family, not anyone. He reached out and took her hand. You broke through those walls, not by trying to save me, but by saving my children, by showing me what love looks like when it doesn't give up. Marcus, I'm not asking for anything. I'm not expecting anything. I just need you to know that you changed my life. And whatever happens from here, I will always be grateful. Grace looked at their joined hands. Then she looked up at his face. I didn't come here looking for this, she said softly. I came to help 3 little boys. I didn't expect to find... Find what? A family, a purpose, a place where I belong. Marcus squeezed her hand. You belong here, Grace. You've always belonged here. I was just too blind to see it. They sat together in the quiet office, hands intertwined, both afraid to say what they were really feeling. Then Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Dr. Chen. At 2 a.m., Grace said. Marcus answered. Dr. Chen, what's wrong? Marcus, I need you to come to the foundation office right away. Something's happened. What kind of something? One of the families we've been working with, the Morrison boy. He was doing the motor pattern exercises with his mother, and he stood up, by himself, for the first time in his life. Marcus's breath caught. How old is he? 7. He's had CP since birth. Every specialist said he would never stand. Tonight he stood for 12 seconds. Marcus looked at Grace, tears forming in his eyes. It's working, he said. What you started with my sons, it's working for others. Grace pressed her hand against her mouth, overcome. "There's more," Dr. Chen continued. 3 other families reported significant progress this week. Children who were told they would never walk are taking steps. Children who couldn't speak are forming words. "Whatever we're doing, Marcus, it's spreading." Marcus hung up the phone and pulled Grace into his arms. "You did this," he said against her hair. "You started all of this. We did this, together." They held each other for a long moment. Then a small voice came from the doorway. "Daddy, Mama, Grace, why are you crying?" They pulled apart to find Lucas standing in the hallway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Standing, by himself, in the middle of the night, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Marcus knelt down and opened his arms. "We're happy crying, buddy. Come here." Lucas actually walked across the hallway and into his father's arms. "I heard the phone," Lucas said. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfect," Marcus said, holding his son close. "Everything is absolutely perfect." The next morning brought another surprise. Marcus woke to find an email from a lawyer he didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Urgent matter regarding Catherine Whitfield estate." He opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Mr. Whitfield," the email began, "I represent the estate of Margaret Chen, who passed away last week. Mrs. Chen was a close friend of your late wife Catherine, and she left instructions that a package be delivered to you upon her death. The package contains personal items and a letter from your wife that Mrs. Chen had been holding in safekeeping." Marcus read the email 3 times. A letter from Catherine, written before she died, held by a friend for 3 years. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely type his response. "Send it immediately. Cost is no object. I need it today." The package arrived by special courier at 4 p.m. Marcus held it in his hands, afraid to open it. Grace stood beside him, offering silent support. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked. "No, stay, please." He opened the package. Inside was a small box containing Catherine's favorite necklace, the one she had worn on their wedding day, and beneath it an envelope with his name written in her handwriting. "Marcus, if you're reading this, then Margaret has fulfilled her promise to deliver this letter when the time was right. I wrote it the night before our scheduled C-section, when I couldn't sleep because I was so excited and so scared at the same time. I want you to know something important. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens in the years to come, I need you to promise me that you won't give up. Not on yourself, not on our sons, not on the possibility of love. I know you, my darling. I know that when things get hard, you build walls. You retreat into control because control feels safe. But our sons won't need a controlled father. They'll need a present one, a loving one, a father who shows up even when it's terrifying. If I'm gone, if something happens and I don't get to raise them with you, please find someone to help you. Not a nanny, not an employee, someone who will love them the way I would have, someone who will fight for them when you're too tired to fight, someone who will remind you that miracles are possible. I believe in miracles, Marcus. I believe in them because I married you and you made me believe that anything was possible. Now I need you to believe too. Our sons are going to be extraordinary. I can feel it. Whatever challenges they face, they will overcome them because they have your strength and my stubbornness, and that combination is unstoppable. I love you more than I can express in words. I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. And if there's any way to watch over you from wherever I am, I will. Take care of our boys. Take care of yourself. And when you find love again, and you will, don't push it away. Embrace it. I want you to be happy, Marcus. That's all I've ever wanted. Forever yours, Catherine. Marcus's tears fell onto the paper, smearing the ink. Grace read over his shoulder, crying quietly. She knew, Marcus whispered. She knew I would need help. She knew I would build walls. She knew everything. She loved you. She knew you because she loved you. Marcus looked at Grace. She told me to find someone to fight for the boys, someone to remind me that miracles are possible. Grace nodded, unable to speak. I found you, Grace. Or maybe she sent you. Either way, you're the answer to a prayer I didn't know I was praying. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands. I love you. I've been afraid to say it, afraid to feel it. But Catherine is right. I can't push it away. I have to embrace it. Grace's tears fell freely now. I love you too, she whispered. I have for a long time. I just didn't think I was allowed. You're allowed, Grace. You're more than allowed. You're wanted. You're needed. You're loved. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then slowly, gently, her lips. When they pulled apart, Lucas was standing in the doorway again. Are you kissing Mama Grace? He asked. Marcus laughed through his tears. Yes, buddy, I am. Good. Adam said you should. Nathan said it was gross. I said it was about time. Grace burst out laughing. Come here, you little spy, Marcus said, scooping Lucas into his arms. Are we a family now? Lucas asked. A real family. Marcus looked at Grace. She nodded, tears still streaming down her face. Yes, buddy, we're a real family now. With Mama Grace forever. Forever and ever. Lucas wrapped his arms around both of them. Good. That's what Mommy in heaven wanted. She told me in a dream. Marcus's heart stopped. What did you say? Mommy talks to me sometimes, when I'm sleeping. She said she sent Mama Grace to help us. She said Daddy needed to learn to love again. She said she's very proud of us. Marcus couldn't breathe. Grace was staring at Lucas with wide eyes. When did she tell you this, sweetheart? Grace asked. Last night. She was pretty. She had a light around her. She said to tell Daddy that she kept her promise too. Marcus remembered Catherine's words in the hospital right before she died. I'll watch over them from wherever I am. She had kept her promise, and somehow, impossibly, she had sent Grace to keep it for her. That night, Marcus sat in the nursery with all three of his sons, telling them stories about their mother. Grace sat beside him holding his hand. Your mom was the bravest person I ever knew, Marcus said. She never gave up on anything, not on me, not on having you, and even from heaven she didn't give up on our family. She sent Mama Grace, Lucas said confidently. Yes, buddy, I think she did. Nathan looked at Grace with his stubborn eyes. You're staying forever. Forever and ever, Grace promised. Adam, quiet as always, reached out and touched Grace's face. Mama, he said softly. My Mama Grace. Grace pulled him into her arms and held him tight. Your Mama baby, always. Marcus watched his family, this miraculous family that had risen from ashes and grief and impossibility. Catherine was right. Miracles were possible. You just had to believe long enough to see them come true. 1 year after Grace walked through the door, Marcus asked her to marry him. He did it in the nursery, surrounded by Catherine's painted clouds with all three boys watching. He knelt on one knee and held out the ring he had designed himself, a band of gold with 3 small diamonds representing each of his sons. Grace Mitchell, you came into my life when I had given up on everything. You saved my sons. You saved me. And now I'm asking you to save me one more time by agreeing to be my wife. Grace's hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Lucas tugged on Nathan's sleeve. Is Daddy asking Mama Grace to stay forever, forever? Nathan rolled his eyes. He already asked that. This is different. It's the same thing, Adam said quietly, just with a ring. Marcus laughed through his own tears. The boys make a good point. I'm asking you to stay forever, but this time I'm asking you to do it officially, with a ceremony and a piece of paper and a lifetime of waking up next to me. Grace knelt down so she was at his level. Marcus Whitfield, I would have stayed forever without a ring. I would have stayed forever without a ceremony. But since you're asking so nicely, yes. 1,000 times yes. Marcus slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms. The boys erupted in cheers. Lucas clapped his hands. Nathan pumped his fist in victory. Adam smiled his quiet, knowing smile. We're getting a real mom, Lucas said. A forever mom. You always had a real mom, Grace said, pulling back from Marcus to look at the boys. Catherine will always be your mother. I'm just lucky enough to love you too. Can we have 2 moms? Nathan asked. You can have as many people love you as your heart can hold, Grace said. And your hearts are very, very big. The wedding was held 6 months later on the anniversary of the day Grace first arrived. They kept it small, family and close friends only. Dr. Chen came with her husband. Dr. Coleman brought flowers from her garden. Marcus's brother David served as best man. And Grace's brother Danny, the physical therapist who had inspired her to never give up, walked her down the aisle. But the real stars of the wedding were 3 little boys who actually walked down the aisle as ring bearers. Lucas led the way, steady and confident. Nathan followed still, a little wobbly, but determined. Adam brought up the rear, taking his time watching everything with those observant eyes. When they reached the altar, all 3 boys climbed onto chairs so they could stand beside their father during the ceremony. "We're getting married too," Lucas announced to the guests. "All of us, together." The crowd laughed through their tears. The minister smiled. "Well then, let's make it official. Marcus, do you take Grace to be your wife?" "I do." "Grace, do you take Marcus to be your husband?" "I do." "And boys," the minister added, looking at Lucas, Nathan, and Adam, "do you take Grace to be your Mama Grace forever?" "We do," all 3 shouted in unison. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife, and officially the Whitfield family." Marcus kissed his bride while his sons cheered. And somewhere Marcus could swear he felt Catherine smiling down on all of them. The first year of marriage brought challenges no one expected. Nathan got sick first, a fever that wouldn't break, followed by seizures that sent them rushing to the hospital at 3 a.m. Marcus held Grace's hand in the waiting room while doctors ran tests. "This is my fault," he said. "I pushed too hard. The foundation, the training programs, the media attention. I took my eye off the boys." "This is not your fault. Children get sick. It happens." "But what if it's related to his condition? What if the progress we've made is reversing somehow?" Grace turned his face toward hers. "Listen to me. Nathan is a fighter. He's been fighting since the day he was born. A fever isn't going to stop him. Nothing is going to stop him." The doctor emerged 3 hours later. "Mr. Whitfield, Mrs. Whitfield, Nathan has a severe ear infection that spread to his mastoid bone. It's serious but treatable. We need to do surgery to drain the infection and place tubes in his ears." Marcus felt his legs weaken. "Surgery. It's a common procedure, but given Nathan's history, we'll need to take extra precautions with anesthesia." Grace squeezed Marcus's hand. "When can you do it?" "Tomorrow morning. He needs to stay overnight for IV antibiotics." Marcus looked at Grace. "You stay with Nathan. I'll go home and be with Lucas and Adam. They'll be scared." "Are you sure? They need to know their father is there. And Nathan needs to know his mother is here." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You called me his mother." "That's what you are, Grace. That's what you've always been." He kissed her forehead and walked out of the hospital, his heart torn between the son in the hospital bed and the 2 sons waiting at home. Lucas and Adam were awake when Marcus arrived. The night nurse had called them, and they were sitting in the living room, faces pale with worry. "Is Nathan okay?" Lucas asked immediately. Marcus knelt in front of them. "Nathan is sick, but the doctors are taking good care of him. He needs surgery tomorrow, but he's going to be fine." "Surgery means cutting," Adam said quietly. "They're going to cut Nathan. They're going to help him, buddy. Sometimes helping means doing things that seem scary, but Nathan is brave, the bravest of all of you." "He's not braver than me," Lucas protested. "You're all brave in different ways. Lucas, you're brave because you lead. Adam, you're brave because you think. And Nathan is brave because he never ever gives up." "Will he be able to walk after the surgery?" Lucas asked. Marcus paused. The question hit him harder than he expected. "The surgery is for his ear, not his legs. But even if something happened to his walking, we would figure it out. Together. As a family." "Promise?" Adam asked. "Promise." The surgery went perfectly. Nathan woke up groggy but alive, the first words out of his mouth a demand for ice cream. Grace laughed and cried at the same time. "You just had brain surgery and you want ice cream." "Not brain surgery," Nathan corrected drowsily. "Ear surgery. Different." "He's definitely fine," Marcus said, relief flooding through him. "He's correcting people. That's our Nathan." 3 days later, Nathan came home to a hero's welcome. Lucas and Adam had made signs with Grace's help. "Welcome home, Nathan, the best brother ever. We missed you." Nathan looked at the signs, then at his brothers, then burst into tears. "I missed you too," he sobbed. "The hospital was so boring. No one would wrestle with me." "I'll wrestle you," Lucas offered. "Not yet," Grace said quickly. "Maybe in a few weeks." "A few weeks." Nathan's face fell. "Doctor's orders, but you can still boss your brothers around from the couch. That should keep you entertained." Nathan considered this. "Okay, Adam, bring me my trucks." Adam rolled his eyes, but went to get the trucks. Marcus watched his sons interact with a full heart. This was family. Not just the good moments, but the scary ones too. Not just the miracles, but the setbacks. Not just the joy, but the fear. And through all of it, love. The foundation grew beyond anything Marcus had imagined. Within 2 years, they had trained over 300 caregivers in Grace's techniques. They had funded research at 12 universities. They had helped over 2,000 families access the equipment and support their children needed. And the success stories kept coming. Children who had been told they would never walk were taking their first steps. Children who had been told they would never speak were saying their first words. Parents who had been told to give up were finding hope. Dr. Chen presented the data at a medical conference in Boston. The Whitfield method, as we've come to call it, combines intensive early intervention with what can only be described as radical belief. The caregivers we train don't just perform exercises, they communicate constant faith in each child's potential, and the results are staggering. She clicked to a slide showing before and after brain scans. These are the neural pathway comparisons for children who underwent the Whitfield method versus traditional therapy. The differences are statistically significant across every measured outcome. A hand went up in the audience and up in the key. "Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that belief alone can rewire the brain?" "I'm suggesting that belief is a necessary component of successful intervention. The techniques matter, but they matter more when delivered by someone who genuinely believes in the child's potential. We don't fully understand why yet, but the data is clear." Another hand. "And the original Whitfield triplets, what's their current status?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Lucas Nathan and Adam Whitfield are now 4 years old. Lucas walks independently and has age-appropriate speech. Nathan walks with minimal support and is beginning to form complex sentences. Adam, the youngest, walks short distances and demonstrates cognitive abilities that far exceed his original prognosis. So they're cured. There is no cure for cerebral palsy. The brain damage they sustained at birth will always be present, but their brains have created remarkable workarounds. They are not limited by their diagnosis. They are defined by their potential." Marcus watched the presentation from the back of the room, Grace beside him. "Did you ever imagine this?" he whispered. "Imagine what? Any of it. The foundation, the research, the thousands of families we've helped." Grace squeezed his hand. "When I walked into your house 4 years ago, I imagined 3 little boys learning to walk. That's all. Everything else grew from that." "You changed the world, Grace. We changed the world, together, with 3 little boys who refused to accept impossible." The boys turned 5, and Marcus planned the biggest birthday party of their lives. The entire foundation staff was invited. Families they had helped came from across the country. Dr. Chen flew in from Johns Hopkins. Even Sarah Chen from National News Network showed up with a camera crew to document the celebration. But the real surprise came when Marcus stood up to make a speech. 5 years ago, my sons were born into a world that had already decided their future. Doctors told me they would never walk, never talk, never live normal lives. I believed them because believing was easier than fighting. He looked at Lucas, Nathan, and Adam, who sat in regular chairs, now no wheelchairs in sight. I was wrong, and I'm grateful every single day that I was wrong. He turned to Grace. 4 years ago, A woman walked through my door and refused to accept the limits I had placed on my sons. She saw what no one else was looking for. She believed when I had given up. She loved my sons when I was too afraid to love them myself. Grace wiped tears from her eyes. Today my sons are 5 years old. They walk, they talk, they run, sort of. The crowd laughed. They fight with each other constantly. More laughter. And they have taught me more about hope and love and faith than I could learn in 100 lifetimes. He raised his glass. To Lucas, Nathan, and Adam, you are the miracle I never knew I needed. And to Grace, the woman who made it all possible. Happy birthday, boys, and thank you for teaching your father how to believe. Everyone raised their glasses. The boys, overwhelmed by the attention, did what 5-year-olds do best. Lucas tried to blow out all 15 candles on the massive cake before his brothers could help. Nathan tackled him. Adam calmly took advantage of the chaos to scoop frosting off the cake with his fingers. Grace and Marcus watched their sons with identical expressions of exasperated love. "This is chaos," Marcus said. "This is family," Grace corrected. "Same thing." She laughed and kissed his cheek. "Same thing," she agreed. 1 month after the birthday party, Lucas asked a question that stopped Marcus cold. "Daddy, can I see Mommy Catherine's room?" Marcus looked at his son. "What room, buddy?" "The room where she used to sleep, before she went to heaven. I want to see it." Marcus hadn't opened the master bedroom since Catherine died. He had moved to a guest room and left everything exactly as it was the night before the delivery. "Why do you want to see it?" Lucas thought about this carefully. "Adam says Mommy talks to him in dreams. I want to feel close to her too. Maybe if I see her room, she'll talk to me." Marcus's heart cracked. He looked at Grace, who nodded gently. "Okay, buddy, let's go see Mommy's room." He took Lucas's hand and walked up the stairs. His legs felt heavy with every step. He hadn't climbed these stairs in years. The door to the master bedroom was dusty. He turned the handle. Everything was exactly as Catherine had left it. Her robe on the chair, her book on the nightstand, her jewelry box on the dresser. Lucas walked in slowly, looking around with wonder. "She was here," he said. "I can feel her." Marcus's throat tightened. "What does she feel like?" "Warm, like sunshine, like the clouds in our room." He walked to the nightstand and touched the book. What was she reading? Marcus looked at the cover. A parenting book, the one she had been studying the night before the delivery. "She was learning how to be a mom," Marcus said. "She wanted to be the best mom in the world for you." "She is the best mom, her and Mama Grace. We have 2 best moms." Lucas climbed onto the bed and lay down on Catherine's pillow. "I can smell her," he said. "She smells like flowers." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, watching his son breathe in the scent of a mother he had never met. "Daddy, yeah, buddy. Thank you for not forgetting her. Thank you for telling us about her every day. Thank you for letting her be our mom, even though she's in heaven." Marcus couldn't speak. He just lay down beside his son and held him close. They stayed like that for a long time. When they finally came downstairs, Grace was waiting with Nathan and Adam. "Can we see Mommy's room too?" Adam asked. Marcus looked at Grace. She nodded. "Yeah, buddy, let's all go together." That night, the entire family slept in the master bedroom for the first time. Marcus and Grace in the big bed, the 3 boys on an air mattress on the floor. It felt right. It felt like healing. It felt like Catherine was finally at peace. The boys started kindergarten in the fall. Marcus had worried for months about how they would handle a regular school. The other children, the teachers, the physical demands of a full day away from home. But Grace reminded him of something important. They've been fighting since the day they were born. A little kindergarten isn't going to scare them. The first day, Marcus and Grace walked all 3 boys to the classroom door. Lucas looked back at them with confident eyes. "We've got this, Dad." Nathan was already sizing up the other kids, probably looking for someone to wrestle. Adam hung back, watching everything, taking it all in. "Are you sure you're ready?" Marcus asked. "We're sure," Lucas said. "We've been training for this our whole lives." He turned and walked into the classroom. Nathan followed. Adam paused at the door. "Daddy." "Yeah, buddy." "Thank you for not giving up on us. Some kids have dads who give up. We don't." He walked into the classroom before Marcus could respond. Grace squeezed Marcus's hand. "He's going to make you cry." "Too late." They stood outside the classroom for a long moment, watching through the window as their sons introduced themselves to their new classmates. Lucas was already making friends, his natural charisma drawing other children to him. Nathan was showing a boy his arm muscles, probably bragging about how strong he was. Adam sat quietly at a table, but Marcus noticed something remarkable. A little girl in a wheelchair had rolled up beside him. Adam was showing her how to move her fingers in the exercises Grace had taught him years ago. He was teaching, helping, sharing what he had learned. Grace saw it too. "He's going to be a healer," she said softly, "just like his mom's." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. His sons were going to be okay, more than okay. They were going to change the world, and it had all started with a woman who refused to believe in impossible. 10 years later, Marcus stood in the audience at a high school graduation. 3 names were called in succession. Lucas David Whitfield, graduating with honors, accepted to Stanford University to study medicine. Nathan James Whitfield, graduating with distinction in athletics, offered scholarships to play basketball at 3 different schools. His coaches still couldn't believe the boy who wasn't supposed to walk had become one of the fastest players in the state. Adam Christopher Whitfield, graduating as valedictorian. His speech about overcoming obstacles had left the entire auditorium in tears. Grace sat beside Marcus, holding his hand, crying openly. "Look at them," she whispered. "Look at what they've become." Marcus watched his 3 sons accept their diplomas. Tall, strong, healthy young men who walked with confidence across the stage. No one in that audience would ever guess that 12 years ago, doctors had said these boys would never stand. After the ceremony, the boys found their parents in the crowd. Lucas hugged Marcus first. "We did it, Dad." "You did it, buddy. All of you." Nathan picked Grace up and spun her around, making her shriek with laughter. Adam, ever the quiet one, simply took Marcus's hand and squeezed it. "Thank you," he said. "For everything." "For what?" "For not giving up. For finding Mama Grace. For believing in us when no one else did." Marcus pulled his youngest son into a hug. "You made it easy to believe, Adam. All 3 of you." They took a family photo in front of the graduation stage. Marcus, Grace, Lucas, Nathan, Adam. A family forged through tragedy and hope and impossible love. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his office, looking at a photograph on his desk. Catherine, 8 months pregnant, glowing with hope for the future. Beside it, a new photograph. The family at graduation, 5 faces smiling at the camera. "We did it, Katie," Marcus whispered. "They grew up. They're okay. They're more than okay." He touched her photograph gently. "Grace takes good care of them, just like you knew she would. And I take care of Grace, just like you told me to." He paused. "I still miss you every day, but the missing doesn't hurt like it used to. It just reminds me of how lucky I was to love you, and how lucky I am to love again." Grace appeared in the doorway, talking to Catherine, telling her about the boys. "What did she say?" Marcus smiled. "She said she's proud. Of all of us." Grace walked in and wrapped her arms around him. "She would be proud. You raised 3 miracles, Marcus Whitfield. We raised them. You and me and Catherine, together." Grace kissed his forehead. "Together," she agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, looking at the photographs of past and present, of loss and love, of endings and beginnings. And Marcus Whitfield, the man who had once given up on hope, realized that miracles weren't single moments. They were lifetimes. They were choices made every single day to believe when believing was hardest. They were love that refused to quit, even when the world said there was no point. His sons were the proof. His life was the proof. And as he held his wife in the quiet of his office, surrounded by evidence of everything they had built together, Marcus understood the truth he had spent years learning. Hope was never the enemy. Giving up was. And as long as there was breath in his body and love in his heart, Marcus Whitfield would never give up again. The billionaire who once watched his sons through security cameras because he was afraid to love them, now held them in his arms every chance he got. The children who were told they would never walk had just walked across a graduation stage. And the woman who started it all, the caregiver who refused to accept impossible, had become the heart of a family that changed the world. Some people call it luck. Some people call it science. Marcus Whitfield called it what it was, a miracle. And miracles, he had learned, didn't require permission. They just required someone brave enough to believe they were possible.